The desert does not speak. It waits. It observes. And when it acts, it does so without mercy. This is not just a story about a plane. It's a story about fate, about miscalculations, about human will pushed past its breaking point, and about how the sky, the sand, and time itself conspired to take 9 men and bury their legacy beneath a sun that never sets. April 4, 1943. An American air base near Salak, Libya. The air tastes like sand and sweat. On the runway, a B-24D Liberator bomber idles, her 4 engines growling against the desert wind. Her name is painted across her side in soft, looping letters. Lady Be Good. It's a new plane. Shiny. Untested. Her crew is new too, green boys from the States, barely seasoned, plucked from training and thrown into the teeth of war. This would be their first mission. Their initiation. A night raid on Naples, deep into enemy territory. Just another link in the long chain of Allied bombing runs designed to cripple the Axis machine. But war, like the desert, is indifferent to plans. From the start, things went wrong. The air that night was thick with dust. Sandstorms had scattered other aircraft across the sky. Many bombers turned back. But Lady Be Good, she pressed on. Alone. Separated. Navigating by stars half blotted by dust. She reached the coast of the Mediterranean, but somewhere along the way she never found her target. Naples was swallowed in the darkness. The bombs were dropped into the sea, wasted. And then she turned home. But in that sky the crew made a critical error. One they never realized. They passed the Libyan coast and kept flying. Over land. Over the endless stretch of the Sahara Desert. But they thought they were still over the sea. Their radio messages tell the story piece by piece. Running out of fuel, they said. Can't see the base. No lights. No radio beacon strong enough to guide them. In their minds they were flying above black waves, not dunes. And when the fuel ran dry they had to make a choice. They jumped. 9 parachutes fell silently through the night. Expecting the chill of seawater, they instead struck the hard, dry skin of the desert. They landed scattered. Dazed. Confused. Alone. Each one of them came to the same realization. They had not been over the ocean at all. They were in the middle of nowhere. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that their bomber, the Lady Be Good, had not crashed. She had glided on. Empty. Unmanned. The engines, starved of fuel, died out one by one. But the plane, she coasted gently, perfectly balanced, and descended as if guided by unseen hands. 16 miles from where her crew had jumped, she touched down in the sand with a softness almost impossible to imagine. Her nose struck the ground, buckling slightly. But she didn't explode. Didn't burn. She just stopped. A ghost ship. Perfectly intact. As if waiting. She would remain there, untouched by man, for 16 years. The men meanwhile began to walk. North. Always north. Believing that was the way to salvation. To rescue. But they were heading deeper into the heart of the Libyan desert. Every step they took was a step away from survival. They had no map. No compass. No idea where they were. One man had a pocket watch. Another carried a journal. Someone had a single canteen. They tore pieces of parachute to shield their heads from the sun. They rationed water drops by the hour. And they walked. Miles turned to days. Feet blistered, split, bled. The sand burned like fire beneath the noonday sun and froze at night. They left behind traces, bits of gear, trail markers scratched into the sand, diary entries written with trembling hands. One wrote, "Our situation is critical. No help. No water. Men collapsing. Not sure how much longer we can go." They covered over 100 miles on foot, in boots shredded by the rocks. With tongues swollen, skin blistered, hallucinations clawing at their minds. One crew member eventually gave up. The others had to leave him behind. Another stumbled and never got back up. A third dragged himself on his belly trying to keep moving. Their last entries are heart-wrenching. One man's journal stopped mid-sentence. Another drew an arrow in the sand, his final direction. Another wrote, "Still walking. Still no sign." They were alive for 8 days. In one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. And no one knew they were even missing. It wasn't until 1959, 16 years later, that an oil exploration team flying over the Sahara spotted something strange. Twisted metal. Something unnaturally straight and silver in the ocean of gold. When they landed, they found the wreck of a bomber. Not burned. Not broken. Just resting in the sand. Inside, flight logs, guns, radio equipment, even food rations and a thermos of tea still in the cockpit. Untouched. Preserved. It was the Lady Be Good. But there were no bodies. No signs of a crash. Just an aircraft abandoned. The U.S. military launched recovery efforts. Soon they began to find the men. One by one their remains appeared far from the plane. First, 5 bodies together. Then miles further, the others. One man had walked more than 120 miles on his own before he collapsed and died. His remains were found clutching his parachute like a blanket. He never stopped trying. And then came the questions. Why had they bailed out? Could they have survived had they stayed with the plane? Why didn't the base receive their distress calls? Was this preventable? But the desert offered no answers. Only silence. After the Lady Be Good was studied, she was stripped for parts. Pieces of her were reused in other planes, other missions. But those who flew with her remnants told stories. Strange mechanical failures. Navigation systems shutting down mid-flight. Crashes. Even deaths. One man who used a salvaged component from her wreck later died in a crash with no clear cause. Another crew reported eerie sounds in the cockpit, whispers, tapping, faint voices through the radio. Some began to whisper, the Lady Be Good was cursed. She had waited. Alone. Watching. And when disturbed, her vengeance echoed through the metal that once carried her crew to their doom. Eventually, her remains were buried by time. The sands covered her piece by piece. Today, almost nothing remains in the desert where she once stood. Just coordinates. Just memory. But the story, the tragedy of 9 men sent to war, betrayed by weather, by fate, by the vast and merciless desert, it remains. The Lady Be Good was not shot down. She was not sabotaged. She simply flew too far, guided by men who couldn't see, into a night that would never end. And in the end, when the crew jumped into the darkness, they leapt not into ocean waves, but into the mouth of the Sahara. A place that does not forgive. A place that remembers nothing, except for bones, broken dreams, and the whisper of lost engines fading into the horizon. Thank you for joining me on this haunting journey. If you felt the weight of this story, the silence of the desert, the tragedy of the Lady Be Good, please like this video, subscribe for more deep historical mysteries, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you next video.